Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today's guest is Dr. Bart Precourt. Dr. Bart is somebody that I have come to know through a group of like-minded individuals that see the world a certain way with a shared horizon and are pitching different ideas on way to go about that shared horizon. There we go. That's the... There was a word that started with P back in the day that you could use that wouldn't get shadow banned and all that other shit. There's books written about that word P. Some are good. Mike Glover has one. It's pretty introductory. I like it. Still want to interview Mike. If anybody's got an inside shot on Mike Glover, hook me up. But yeah, avoiding that word seems to do better for not getting throttled on any of these sites for shares and things like that. So we're going to avoid that word. Needless to say, Dr. Bart is somebody that I've gotten to know through there, and he has a wealth of knowledge on a lot of shit. And he actually has a similar background in that he, like most of the people on this show, has healed himself through a variety of means and come in to know health and wellness in a different light. You might call that alternative medicine, alternative health, whatever you want to call that. Dr. Bart is really fucking dialed, and he's in his 50s. He looks fantastic. He has opted to move into the countryside of Florida and start to farm. And he's done some really cool things. And I wanted to have him on this podcast just to share with you, his vision of where things are headed, but also, some of the things that he's done. Some of the things that he's done in light of everything that we see in the world, just as a means of having his shit together going forward. Without further ado, my brother, Dr. Bart Precourt. Dr. Bart, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Great to be here, brother. Thanks for having me on today. Excited for a conversation with you. Yeah.
We've I think similar to a couple of the guys that I've had on, Tucker and God, I always fuck up there. I always crisscross their names. But we had Zach Hansen on, and I was thinking Dale Stark, but I got to get him on at some point too. But I was thinking about going on your podcast, and it was cool, all the similarities we had, in various ways. I was like, hell yeah, man, that's great. So I didn't know that, obviously, when we're chatting in the group, it's pertaining to probably the second half of our conversation here, like what can we do in the face of some of the issues that we find today. And but start us off, what was life like growing up? What made you you? And then we can dive into some of the nitty gritty of today's world.
Yeah. Man, that's kind of a wide open question. Anyways, I grew up in Connecticut. Great family life, mom, dad, brother, all of it solid. I definitely would put myself in the category of very fortunate. Had a lot of love in my family. My family was tight. They stayed married until my father passed. So I have a lot of really good things in my background to be very grateful for and to use moving forward. So I feel very, very, very blessed in my upbringing. Loved all sports. I played them all. I don't know if I was good at any of them, or I don't know if I was great at any of them. I was probably good enough to play them all. Eventually, when I got into college, rugby became kind of the love of my life. So I played that for a bunch of years. And then that brought on, some interesting injuries along the way. And as a result of that, that's how then I injured myself bad enough my back to get involved with chiropractic, which then a couple of years later, kind of spurned this, man, what if I became a chiropractor one day? So that journey kind of started off with, like many things, kind of some failures, had some injuries early too. So when I was 19, I had an injury in my lower lumbar spine, and I couldn't feel, I had like partial sensation from my belly button down. So imagine this for a moment. I know you're in college and those are like our like fun years, right? So I was captain of my rugby team and, living the best life I could at the moment, drinking, chasing women, just all that fun stuff, right? And I get hit in this game. It was cold. There was literally ice on the ground. It was brutal up in the Northeast. And from that point forward, I could use, but barely use anything below my belly button, anything. And
damn.
Yeah. So really, you think about that. I'm like, whoa, all right. 19-year-old college kid can't use anything below the belly button. I had a hard time going to the bathroom, all stuff like that. So my mom, being an amazing woman that she is, brought me off to the best doctors, and I ended up in a hospital, and, lots of different x-rays and MRIs and all that stuff. And eventually they told me that I had 3 bulging discs in my lower spine. And I still remember, Kyle, to this day, sitting there in front of the doctors. In my mind, there's like 3 or 4 people in white coats there. And they told me that I wouldn't play contact sports again. I wouldn't lift heavy weights. Running was unlikely. And that I would have to basically just be really easy on my spine, eventually have some surgeries. My mom, who being this, strong-willed, that's a nice way of saying a very strong-willed woman, wasn't taking it. And I was shocked. And for me at 19 years old, that was the first time I had a moment in my life where things were cloudy. They were kind of dark. And I remember we left the hospital, and if you left the hospital and turned left, that would bring me home. But we took a right. And it was kind of funny because the only way I can get in the car, my back was so jacked up, I had to sit backwards in the back seat. So I was looking out the back window. And Mom, where are we going? And she said, we're going to go to my chiropractor. And I'd never heard that word spoken in our family. Not for better or for worse, just I'd never heard the word come up in our family. So, and I literally remember saying, why are we going to one of those quacks? That's all I had heard about chiropractic and quack or whatever. And then there was really no conversation. I get there, and it was really interesting. This was one of those little turning points in life. And I remember my chiropractor saying very gently, very confident, and very kindly saying, hey, listen, you take better care of your spine. You're a young, healthy man. You take better care of yourself. This will heal, and you can do some amazing things. It's all I needed to hear. And so sure enough, he gave me some adjustments, did his thing. In a couple of weeks, I was back on a rugby field. Probably shouldn't have been, but I was back playing rugby within a couple of weeks. And I kept hurting myself, but that kind of started this entire unknown category for me of looking and listening to my body. That was the first time in my 19 years on this earth to really take a look at what am I doing with the gift that I was given.
Yeah, that's massive. It's funny, you mentioned the not having it good or bad with the chiropractic. They had I've obviously in any field you can have people that are great and people even medical doctors. There's great medical doctors. There's dog shit medical doctors. It's no different for anything. But I've had some of the best chiropractors I've ever had in my life. Dr. Justin Frank at Premier Spine and Sport in San Jose was like the guy I fucking leaned on. I was in there twice a week for every camp, in my whole fight career. Like, he kept me able to fucking do the thing, and I know probably a lot of guys in the UFC rely heavily on that for not just for adjustments on the spine, but soft tissue work. And, great chiropractors they're hungry. They're students, they want to keep learning this stuff. It's not like they get the thing on the wall and they're like, all right, now come in and I'll get you healed up. My favorite chiropractors are the ones that, like me, are lifelong learners that want to keep going and pursuing other things. But yeah, there is especially, like that lady that went on Rogan's, like there's a tendency, especially to, for it to get shit on by Western medicine, the official, the official arbiters of real information and real doctors, so, but that's cool that seed was planted. It took me a little bit longer than you in college because I didn't have that injury. It was still debauchery. And it was really in my fight career and then work with plant medicines that first started me to, actually take an interior look at like, holy shit, how am I treating this thing? It's the only one I get this go around. I got to pay attention,
Yeah, a little bit later so there was a lot of things that took place. I went off to college. I got a business degree. And then in that whole time, in the back of my mind, I always would wonder, wow, wonder what it would take. Wonder if I could become a chiropractor. So eventually that took place. I went to college, I got my 4-year degree. It took 5 years, but I got my 4-year degree. And then I got out, and then I chose, after working a couple of years, to go back into chiropractic school. And at chiropractic school, I learned this one little phrase that it still has a deep-seated meaning to me to this day. And so there's a philosophy in chiropractic. It's a 3-legged stool. It's the science, philosophy, and the art. So the art is our ability to adjust and provide our service. There's the science, of course, knowing your anatomy and physiology. And that was where most of the science for chiropractors is based, in physiology, anatomy, whatnot. And then the philosophy was something brand new for me. I remember the first time someone said, do you have a philosophy? And I don't know. I don't know that I have a philosophy. And in the chiropractic realm, there was this very simple philosophy, which to this day, I hold very strongly, in that it is that the power that made the body heals the body. And there's no other way. So it happened from above down and from inside out. And interpreting that, just meaning that our creator gave this amazing, powerful healing machine. And we are, you know that. Think about, Kyle, what you've put your body through the course of your life. And you're still here today having this conversation. And I think the same thing, all the years of rugby and then getting involved with, mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu and whatnot, car accidents, all that stuff. But the power that made the body heals the body. And it always happens from above down and from the inside out. And if we could align those things and not interfere, literally allowing that universal energy, that universal power to get in first place, then miracles happen every day.
I absolutely love that. And what you're speaking to is exactly where Rudolf Steiner went. That's what his, biggest, if there's, 118, I think over 300 different lectures, but 118 different topics amongst those lectures and books that Steiner put forward. And originally, a lot of his lectures weren't meant to be books, but in the end, they said, yeah, of course, you can put them in print. And because he was just such a genius. But anthroposophical medicine was that. Anthropophagy is exactly what you're describing right now, that there is an innate ability for the body to heal itself if we're not, standing in the way of that.
Yeah, so that journey then it kept the quest. And maybe this is the quest that most chiropractors that we have without even knowing it, is that it is this constant quest of allowing this innate expression to take place, which requires us to then think about what's interfering with it. Is it our thoughts? Is it our food? Is it traumas from the past? Whatever it could be. So there's this never-ending search, and this, if you have that quest, that you can continue to clear the vessel, so there's not interference. So this wisdom, let's we let it roll if we can.
So this started, you said a couple years, you had a couple years off, and then you go through chiropractic school, and that's like 2 or 3 years. Is that right?
So no, that's a full 4 years.
Oh, shit. So you did another 4 after the 5. Okay.
Yeah. It's a full 4 years. It goes all the way through. And it was a joy for me to literally learn about my own body, learn about, physiology, anatomy, right after that. And I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. So I knew that I had immediately following school, I wanted to open up my own practice. So I took those 4 years as an opportunity, quite frankly, to learn everything I could, weekends, nights on top of my studies, just to dive in and learn from literally the masters, the old timers who've done this for decades. And that's what for 4 years, I spent every waking moment I could mentoring with other people. And I'm so blessed. I've had so many amazing men and women that have shared so much with me. That when I was done school, I was ready to rock, and I dove right into private practice up in Atlanta, probably 10, 11 years. My wife and I fell in love with the beach, which is the Florida beach, which is the Panhandle. By the way, it's probably the nicest beaches in our country. They're absolutely beautiful, beautiful white sands. And it was about
you're gonna get some hate for saying that. Just like all these people moving to Austin in 2020 started talking about their favorite places, and people are like, "Shut the fuck up, dude! Keep your mouth shut about these places."
But I tell you, it's magical where we landed. And in the beginning, it was just we were just doing some real estate investing down here, and then we fell in love with it. And then one day we just kind of said, "Well, why don't we just make a change? Why don't we just try going and living in Florida?" And that was
you met her in Atlanta, is that right?
Yeah, I met my wife. Was
chiropractic school there in Atlanta?
It was. The chiropractic school was in Atlanta, and then I was fortunate to run into my wife. I definitely married up. My wife's a former Olympian. She played in the 96 games. So she too has that athletic, spirited background, and also a student of life and student of health and nutrition and all of those things. So I was fortunate to then be able to participate on, being the chiropractor oftentimes for her Olympic team and do some travel there. So we had a lot of alignments and we just really, like many relationships, I think we found each other at the perfect time in life. And she was about to retire and I was about to graduate and start our next journeys. And since then, it's been an amazing journey. We opened up a practice. We started doing some investing down in Florida. Next thing you know, my wife opened up a yoga studio. She turned her athletic prowess, which was really hard. She was a field hockey player. And as a professional athlete, there's no days off. And that's why I say I'm athletic, but I was never a professional athlete. I never spent every waking hour as if it was my job. And to watch people like yourself and other people, it's just so much respect for all of those men and women that do it, because there's so much potential for failure, so much potential for harm and risk, that it takes an inner power that not many people have to capable of doing that day in and day out. So I was able to witness that firsthand and try to keep up with some of it. Eventually, we sold the practice in Atlanta and moved down to Florida, where my wife transitioned all that energy that she was hardcore into athletics, and opened up a yoga studio. And then we became a yoga teacher training school. Now we have a health studio. It's a small little beach house. We have, chiropractic, and I do acupuncture, functional medicine, functional nutrition, kinesiology. So a lot of tools in the belt, probably very similar to the chiropractors you've met. We just keep adding the tools, keep on serving. And what the funny thing is, Kyle, it's a lot of the times we're learning those tools so we can help ourselves through the things that we put ourselves through. And then, of course, serving our people that we're trying to take care of.
Yeah, my buddy Dr. Dan Engel, who wrote the concussion repair manual. Just a phenomenal guy. He's got he's got a book coming out on the nature of God, which will be really cool. I'm fascinated for that. But he's a licensed psychiatrist. Spent a year and a half in the Amazon apprenticing with ayahuasca, and came back. So he has this beautiful Western medicine background with real deal indigenous wisdom and medicine. And he's like, who do you think are the kind of people that become psychologists or psychiatrists? He's like, what do you think draws them there? And I was like, oh, that actually makes a shit ton of sense. They got to do their own shit, and that's they're there because they want to know for themselves. But yeah, I think of that too, like the old see a need, fill a need. Everything we did when I was at On It from a supplement standpoint was just that. Like, hey, I want to experience this, so let's make the best way we can do that. Like this is the product that we wanted to, Aubrey wanted to retool Alpha Brain. So we started thinking about what if we were going to throw the kitchen sink in something for the very best, like mind altering substance that's legal. How do we do that? And we helped formulate that for Alpha Brain Black Label. But that's just it. Like you think about what you want, and it's like that's then that becomes a part of your mastery that gets added to the toolbox, and it's something you can give back and offer. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a fun ride. That's what makes it continue. Even though I've been doing this for 27 years, I still enjoy it. We've shaped it a little bit different. I'm in my clinic, my brick and mortar, just 2 days a week at this point. We have a fair amount of other fun things we're creating in life. Yet it's a journey, because you never stop learning. And there's always another bridge. And my needs right now as a 53-year-old person than when I was 35 years old is completely different. And so the journey's been fun. And so what we ended up, since we've opened that, we then spent some more time just kind of expanding. And we recently opened up an organic cafe, and never been in the restaurant world. And again, it was filling the void. So we have the most beautiful beaches in our country, no doubt. And yet the substance for eating clean hasn't quite caught up. We're still in the South. And so my wife and I, that's a big part of our lives, of eating clean and being very conscious and mindful of what we do put into our bodies. We decided one day that why not? Let's open up a cafe. Let's do it to our standards, having of course, no idea what that means or how hard that might have been. We decided to open up this little organic cafe. We bought the building right next to us. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing because it's the only one of the such in the area. And how many other people consciously right now, sorry about that, are choosing to put clean food in their bodies. And we knew this. It's almost like that silent majority behind the scenes. They're there, folks, like on many levels. The moment we opened, it's been amazing on how many people have been saying, thank you, we've been looking for this. And simultaneously, how many other people told us, not down here, no one's going to spend $12 for an organic cold pressed juice. And we can't produce enough, I should probably not tell everyone that. But nonetheless, it's been an amazing journey. And now, here I am, I'm sitting not at our beach house, but our farmhouse. And now the eggs that we produce every day are supplying our cafe with all the eggs. Yeah, so it's been this. And Kyle, I gotta tell you, like that wasn't the plan. I'd like to sit here and act like I was a master strategist. That wasn't the plan.
Well, that's phenomenal. You guys have kids?
No kids.
Okay,
And
so that definitely makes it a little easier to stay focused on the business trajectory and all that stuff. That's a yeah. It would certainly take a load off my chest in the last 3 years. No doubt.
yeah. And the ability to move like that there was just so many things that fell in place. We didn't have kids. We were in the right place with our resources, just so many different things that it was just us. And we knew that no matter where we landed, it would work. There was no guarantees, but we would figure it out. And even with this farm, we were just looking for a place to go hang out with our dogs. We don't have kids. The other big part of our life is our dogs. We've got 9 dogs. And
Damn.
yeah, and then we're not talking about farm dogs that are just like outside. We got 9 inside dogs. And so people ask me all the time, Bart, why do you have 9 dogs? It's got to be hard. I'm like, it is definitely hard. It's a lot. And it's the same reason we have 120 chickens. And when people ask me, why do you have 120 chickens? It's the same reason I have 9 dogs. And that is because if you have a happy wife, you have a happy life. My wife loves animals, and as do I. I literally do. I grew up with a father who taught me how to rescue snakes, heal them up, patch them back up if they've been hitting the road. So I have a true love and respect for nature. It's just built within me. We have snakes up in here. My goal is not to kill every snake, not by any stretch. We put them where they need to be. If I have to move them, we move them. So we have this true love of nature and gaining that. And I think you probably would agree with this. When you have the land and you become the shepherd of that land, it feels different. You take on a different responsibility, like it's an extension of your family to some degree. And when you start to shepherd it in such a way with love and kindness and respect for what it's trying to do, to give back to the universal energy, you can sit back and have an entirely different perspective on how to commingle and coexist with the land and the animals versus just taking from it.
Yeah, that relationship is two-way, right? And communication is too. That's something that I wasn't necessarily privy to until plant medicines and the work with my boxing coach, who was an indigenous elder. And, like that's my first little rumblings of that. And then like a little bit of firsthand experience. And Dr. Will Tagle, who passed away a year or two ago, was phenomenal. He wrote 8 different books, PhD in psychology, PhD in physics, just a brilliant dude. And, he talks about the mother tongue. He has a whole book on it. This forgotten language that speaks through all things in nature. Like whatever's animating me is animating all things. And there's an ability to tap into that. I've found that the more I put myself in the container of nature, especially one that I'm familiar with, the more available that becomes. I have the opportunity then, because I'm there, I'm not in a box inside like I am right now as I podcast with you outdoors. You're in the container, right? So there's an availability there for you to tap into that, and the land is speaking. It's always speaking to us. So that's phenomenal that you've drawn that.
Yeah, it's in every day. I feel like I'm learning something new. We have an orchard that we planted. We have the chickens, as I mentioned, the ducks. I think we're going to end there. We're going to add bees at the end of the fall or beginning of the spring, something like that. So that'll probably be our big parts. We'll have an orchard, the hens, and then also the bees. Here on our farm, I don't believe we'll do cow or goat or anything like that. So this will be it. But we have a lot of cow farmers nearby that we are, starting to create real bonds with. And we're new to the area, so we recognize and respect the fact that we've moved into where a lot of farmers are already here. And they have a way and a culture, and a lot of it's just built off of trust and respect. And that too is building every day as we've kind of entered this new community. It's been about 1.5 years, and I think we've made some good connections. And now we're starting to find other farmers and people, quite frankly, have literally got the world's best neighbors. Kyle, if I could have been plopped in like in the middle of 2 people that exactly would fit into our group, it happened. Like one guy's an old Marine, and and he's just a great guy, and we have all the same kinds, like philosophies and approaches. And same thing, the guy that just moved into the left of me, and several acres away, but when they hear me out here target shooting and whatnot, and just the like-minded people. And it's beautiful to know that I'm surrounded by people like that. And there's a lot of really good people out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that the little synchronicities of life. The God nod leads you to the exact place and the exact moment you need to be in. When did this all start for you? You talked a bit about having, you didn't have the plan. How much did 2020, play into? I don't know what life was like in Georgia, or if you already were in Florida, which would have been a huge plus. We thankfully had moved to Austin in 2017, and Texas as a whole was really great, especially in 2021 as we started to figure out this is not the bubonic plague. But Austin itself is quite blue, and certainly, they had 25,000 people sign a petition to have masks reinstated. And after Governor Abbott had taken away, and I was like scratching my head, like, I'm for sure eating crazy pills right now, because fucking I can't imagine that people would want to do that, So, or if they do want to do that, cool, man, put them on, but don't fucking make the rest of us, So, what was, how did that pivotal moment shape you guys and where you're at? And was it something that got you into farming, or was it something that you'd already planned on doing beforehand?
It sped it up, and I think it became a lot more conscious in that moment. So I'm in Florida now, and both the farm and the beach house are in Florida. So we're all in Florida. And fortunately, where we are in Florida, there was probably an 80% of, hey, it'd be cool if everyone chooses what they want to do, and let's not talk about this. So you in the middle of everything, you could have drove down the street. So I'll give an example. We had an organic cafe, I think of a coffee shop and breakfast sandwiches. And then we had our health studio. We stayed open, Kyle. We just stayed open. And we definitely lost a lot of friends that were, in theory, friends for 10, 20 years, clients. And my wife and I would talk about this regularly, and we would have the conversation and always end in, we have to be who we are. That's what got us here. We have to be truth and true to ourselves. So that kind of, we said, all right, we're going to draw our line, and we're going to be okay with this. And we found that a lot of other people were so grateful and so thankful as our business stayed open, and a lot of others did close. We didn't require masks. We didn't require our staff to do it, but we also invited them. If you wanted to, sweet. Like, do what you want to do. If you want to get educated about it, I'm here for you. So we didn't push anything. We just said, we're going to continue with the philosophy of choice is yours. So that opened up an opportunity for us to pause. We slowed down a little bit. It was almost like this, this big stagnation through the nation, I think, took place. So a lot of us just think, all right, here we are, more or less being told, Kyle, I live about 100 yards from the Gulf of Mexico. And they boarded up the walkways to the beach. Even explain it. Like, they boarded up the beach because they didn't want people on the beach. And in that moment, I found myself no longer really congruent with some of the people doing those things. I was like, man, I'm now boxed. And here I am. I live on the beach for a reason. And that's when my wife and I decided to then just expand. We weren't even looking for a farm. We were just looking for land. We wanted to have land, knowing that one day something would be good to have an abundance of land. We didn't know what it looked like. We had no real master plan. We literally opened our cafe in 2020 in the heart of COVID. That was interesting. So we opened up this new business and had, like our grand opening and everything in the middle of COVID, Kyle. It was so you can imagine we had some people raising eyebrows. We're fortunate we were in an area that, for the most part, philosophically, and there's some hardcore, there's always the extremes, but for the most part, people were down with choice. Some of the schools did not do that. The schools kind of laid a line. I think they were afraid of, fear was the predominant thing above it all. I think fear drove a lot of people to make a lot of decisions. And hopefully a lot of people have learned, because they're going to have I think they're going to have a lot of other opportunities to be faced with fearful situations. So we roll forward. We eventually find the property. And as you know, it's always over budget. And all of those things. But we knew the moment we rolled up here, I didn't even go in the house. There was a house here too. That was like bonus. We were just looking for land at the time. So there was a nice house right behind me here. There's some pole barns, some tractors, and just everything. And I was just looking at the land. This is the one. And so we worked it out in a couple of days. We figured out how to get it under contract and figured out all the other details that it took to make this happen. And we made it happen. And then once we were here, it really started to align. And I'll tell you, being part of our group really helped me take this thoughts that were all over the place, because there's some amazing people in our group, right? And then all of a sudden starting to really like ask the questions. Well, do I have a water supply? Let's just go something that simple. If worse came to worse and the water was tainted or we couldn't get it or whatnot, do I have a water supply? And sure enough, I got 2 of my own wells here. So that was cool to know. Do I have the ability to feed myself? And that was a big no. I didn't have the ability to feed myself. And how easy would it be to have some chickens? I had plenty of people in Florida have 5 or 6 chickens. And they talk about all the time how it's just the easiest thing in the world. You get 5 or 6 chickens, you get a couple eggs a day, you would be feeding yourself and your family easy breezy. And raising chickens is, now that I'm figuring out, that first couple months was a little challenging. You know, they got to make sure they're live for the first 5 or 6 months. But then after that, they're resilient little suckers. They just keep producing food. So it was a slow progression, little bit by little bit. Originally, we thought we'd have just like 30 birds. And then we figured out the effort for 30 or 50 would probably be about the same as 100. And then we dove deep into, well, how do we feed these birds as well as we feed ourselves? You know, our organic produce. And my wife is resilient when it comes to those things. No different than our cafe. Our cafe is 100% organic. And when we started, and I know you know this, Kyle, but when we started to really vet all the companies, vet every label and everything, every chicken farmer, everything that we had in our place, when we started to vet, what we found consistently was that we would come short of getting the actual answer. And that was a little disturbing. That was even in the organic world. Like we would ask, well, the eggs that we're buying at whatever, $10 a dozen, do they have corn? Are they soy? Can you guarantee that, you know, everything is clean all the way? And it was hard to get those answers, even from the best of the best that's sitting on the grocery store shelves. So we started to think a little bit deeper, and what could we do? What small piece could we play a role in? And chickens was an easy one.
Yeah, that is something that was mind blowing. It took us a long time, you know, in Texas to find 100% no spray hay. I was like, that's unbelievable to me. But then, you know, one of our neighbors, actually 2 of our neighbors spray mesquite killer. They don't do like glyphosate shit or a bunch of other stuff. I'm sure there's glyphosate in the mesquite killer actually, but they do free range cattle rotations, but they have these beautiful pastures. And I was like, I wonder how they have all that grass and no mesquite, because our shit's just fucking, you know, like we had to take this thing called a cedar eater at $10,000 a day to chew through these trees and spit it out as mulch, right? And they'd clear lanes for us so we could do mobile fencing to rotate our cows and our sheep. And I was like, man, mesquite just grows on top of each other here, you know, and it's growing everywhere and it's seeding itself and it needs no water. I mean, it's the most drought resistant thing on the freaking planet. And it just lives. It's such a survivor. It's like the plant world's coyote, you know, it's insane. But then, yeah, we find that out. And so like, it took us a long time to find no spray hay. And that's just as a supplement for the animals we got on rotation. You know, for the chickens, it was like, we're talking to different guys like Dr. Anthony Gustin, who started Perfect Keto. He's a buddy. There's different people in the area that are all like-minded, you know, like, hey, they don't sell this normally, but if we do, you know, organic with no corn, no soy, and we all go in on it, they'll make it for us if we get the order big enough, that kind of thing. So those are things that we've been looking into. You know, oddly enough, we might dive into this depending on where you want to take it, but you know, with the whole tech sector, you know, trying to push us towards cell-based meat, eating insects and shit like that, there is one thing that I enjoy out of this, and that there are companies that can take like black fly larva and reproduce it very quickly and organically, or various other insects, and that is perfect for chickens. It's perfect for fowl. It's perfect for waterfowl. It's like one of the best things to if you had something that could, you know, regenerate insects at a higher level, and that could be their supplement. Because most people think of hens as vegetarians. Like, nah, dude, we fucking take our scraps out, and the first thing they go for is the meat. Secondary to that, might have a little starch. And then lastly, they're going to eat some grass or some other shit that runs up in there. Like these guys, they want all the protein they can get their hands on and fat too. I've given them, I went hunting for elk in January, and one of the quarters was pretty mangled. So we just left the bones out and they just picked it clean. It was done in under 24 hours. They had that thing. And this is like 30 birds, just picked it spotless. So, but yeah, I think about that. Like there are certain avenues, and I like Mike Dillard. He's a close friend of ours. I like how Dillard is also one of the guys that looks through to see the benefits of technology and the potentials for a freer world through that technology. And I like that.
Yeah, this journey has exposed a lot of that for us in terms of watching what else could we utilize in terms of insects is an interesting thing. This whole push toward these fake foods, and I think it's going to get harder for people to really understand. The labeling right now is getting more and more facetious. I think they've just passed some new rules that they're not even going to have to tell us what's in their food, if it's manufactured or not. And that's where I think the importance of finding locally, preferably locally, men and women who are purveyors of food. And if people aren't thinking about that, the time is now. Because I also think that the people who are the purveyors are eventually become these super high commodity businesses and people. I really do. And it seems like a novel thought right now that the egg farmer or the farmer is going to be someone of serious, value in the future. So back to even when I grew up in the backyard. My entire life we had a garden. And some of my fondest memories with my father would be going back in that garden, and we'd be picking strawberries or green beans, and my dad would bring down a little thing of salt, and we would shake salt and put it right on, spit on it, wipe it off the tomato, put some salt on it, and eat it. And then all of a sudden, as kind of life and whatnot took place, I can't even recall, Kyle, for like 30 years knowing anyone that even had a garden. And so it was interesting. I don't know if it was just because I stepped out and I was living in Atlanta or in different cities, but it was rare for me to run into anyone that was growing their own food. And now I see there's no doubt this influx of people at least paying attention, whether it's just cool for them or not, I don't know. Yet, nonetheless, I think a lot of people are starting to recognize the value of either knowing someone or starting to produce a little bit. I have some concerns that they're going to put some new regulations on just serving eggs. I see it coming. Because there's so many of us doing it. I think eventually it's going to be something that'll put a little dent in the big commercial component of the control of the eggs and the chemicals that they use. And I think there'll be so many egg farmers out there right now that people are borderline giving them away or producing high qualities. I eventually see more and more regulation coming because I don't think they want us to just feed each other, quite frankly.
Yeah, that does stand in the way of control necessary to implement a one world government. CBDCs, you name it. Any of these things that people are like, oh, that'll never happen. You're like, let's see how desperate you get to, like you'll own nothing and be happy. First comes the you'll own nothing. Right. Yeah. That's the first part of that sentence. And like, if you get to that point, then you might say, yeah, give me some fucking insects. I'm starving to death. Right. Or sure, I've been broke for 3 months and I'm living on table scraps and yeah, I'll take the central bank digital currency, whatever the thing is. I mean, there are ways to implement these things. I have an excellent book in my hands you guys are going to love. It's called Control Oligarchs. It's not out yet. It's by Seamus Brunner. He's a great follower on Twitter or great follow on Twitter. I'm going to get him on, but there is a money track. Like it's not just conspiracy shit. I got my Plandemic shirt on. If you follow the money, it becomes pretty obvious. And, Gates, Bezos, all these guys are into making their fake eggs. Like they have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into these companies. So like there is a vested interest in forcing these things to be consumed. Like there's like there's zero cholesterol and there's this and that. Like that's the problem with health today. So there's ways of marketing it, but then there's also ways of implementing it through legislation where now it's going to be harder. We know a couple of things happened. It became very hard to get organic eggs in the store for a long time. There's the egg shortage. And they said, some weird bird flu and they had to burn 90,000 eggs. It's like, really? That's what happened? And I saw plenty of videos from guys in Ireland, Spain, the USA, all with just freezers full of them. Just saying like, there is no egg shortage. We didn't have to burn these guys down. that they won't, the grocery stores are not paying us for our increase in cost because the increase in all costs farming have gone up, right? They don't want to pay it. So now we're stuck with the 100,000 eggs, in our fridge, that kind of thing. So, there's always some bit of fuckery going on, but I think about that, no doubt there will be legislation. Twice. It happened in the first run of Obama and the second term of Obama. They tried to eliminate our ability to grow our own food legally. They tried to take that right away twice. And thankfully there's still good people, in Congress and in the government that were like, no, this is a bad idea. What do you mean take away the ability for people to grow their own food, right? But that got put up twice, back-to-back terms, right? So this isn't something new. This is a battle that's been ongoing that most people have no fucking clue about. And at the same time, something that's not being reported, but if you follow the right people, you'll see over 115 food processing and meat processing centers in the United States alone have gone up in flames in the last 2 years. 115. And additionally, it's probably closer to 130 if you count Mexico and Canada. When you think about that, as they report it, I know I've said it on this podcast before, but it is worth re-mentioning. They'll say all previous fires were termed arson. Like we still under investigation for this one, but everything previous, like somebody lit the fucking place on fire, right? So, and now we have, such a fast amount of these things going up in flames. When I was down at Soltara in Costa Rica in April, the third largest dairy farm in Texas mushroom clouded up. There's video footage of it. It was bombed. There was there's no thing that caught fire on the inside of this thing. There's not enough energy in a dairy farm to make it explode like that, right? And it's just like no one's talking about that. So, there's a you can push the panic button, and for a great deal of the fire that's been lit under my ass has been thanks to fear and its beneficial ways. And at the same time, we all have the ability to do something different. Like we have the ability to say, okay, I can be a victim here, or maybe I make it a connection, right? Like we have a delivery service, but I'll drive 90 minutes sometimes just to go to our dairy farm. A2 raw Jersey cows. I want to see those cows. They're fucking healthy. They're gorgeous. They're blue ribbon holders at the state fair for like 8 out of the last 10 years. The people there working there are incredible. Darlene, is old dairy farmers, been doing it for like 50 years. They're awesome. Like I want to have that relationship. I split a cow at the Rome Ranch Bison, the guys that do Force of Nature out in Fredericksburg, and split a cow with Taylor, one of the co-founders, and it's like that. Those are relationships. You don't have to be a farmer to have those relationships. Those relationships are important. And then if you are doing like what you're doing, you don't have to do it all. Like, guys around you that are doing beef. And like, we don't do everything at our farm, but Jesse Elder, who's another mutual friend, been on the podcast. He's got the things we're not doing. He's doing pig and he's doing meat birds. It's like, we can have the egg layers and the cows and the sheep, and he can do the pig and the meat birds. And we've got exchange there. And, my goal eventually is to have a little farm stand where we sell our products, but we also sell Jesse's, and we sell the raw milk from Schulenburg, and we, sell Dos Lunes cheese, which is raw cheese made from that very good milk. There's things like that where we can kind of coordinate. And then you don't have to drive all around Texas to get these things. They're available in Lockhart. They're available in Bastrop. They're available wherever.
Yeah, I love how you're thinking that. It's very similar here as well. And I would say for anyone listening that might hear us, and we both have farms, you don't have to go get a farm, because what the people who are doing this also need consumers. So you can be the consumer part of this. So you don't necessarily have to learn all these things. You can make choices, though, in your life to go a little bit out of your way to, and it's probably going to cost an extra buck here or there, or you might travel 90 minutes for something, whatnot. I would go back, Kyle, and, went through the plandemic, which I think is accurately stated. A lot of people made decisions, and those decisions, I think, they are the setup. And I hate thinking of that made us like it was a big experiment to some degree, where if you thought that some of your everyday freedoms were going to be taken away, what bad decisions might you make? And we saw that happen. Often when someone comes into my office, and I love and respect wherever they, decisions they have to make. But when someone tells me I had to get the shot or whatever, because I had to work, I immediately know that they're vulnerable for the next one. In the event that they say subtle little change in words, I chose to get the shot because I wanted to work. and the work was more important. The frame that most people have right now is kind of like, oh, I blamed it and it'll happen again. So I would say for everyone, listen, just pay attention to the same reasons that we don't do some of the foundational stuff. We don't go out of our way to make sure that you're eating organic foods, or you're putting real food into your body, or you're getting your exercise. And those subtle decisions are going to get exposed when or if there is a bigger game or a bigger, prize in the balance here in terms of, what could we win or lose here? So I think everyone, especially if you're not a farmer and you don't have, a bunch of chickens hanging out, you don't have to be, and you can participate on any level, meaning that you can also consume. So if you're out there and wondering, does it matter if I buy locally, the guy who has that grass-fed beef, even it may not be USDA stamped organic, you need to have a relationship with that gentleman or that person and find out, are they philosophically doing whatever case? Like your farm, I doubt you're going to go through all the expenses of getting a stamp from USDA, correct? No way.
They're as fucking corrupt as the FDA. There's 0 point for that.
Correct. Yeah. So having that relationship, and there's so many people doing it now, it's a silent slide that can happen behind the scenes, and let them do all that crazy ass stuff that I think they're intending to do. The insects is an interesting thing. I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, my wife and I, we often get away to this little place down in Mexico called Maroma. They have this incredible spa. That's why we go. It's kind of just a nice little silent, kind of high-end little place, but it's all outside and whatnot. One day we're sitting there, and I thought I was on like Candy Camera or something. They deliver us this platter of all these foods they're making on site. And in one of the little, there's like avocado and apples and nuts and whatnot. And then one of those little sections was all these crickets. And I'm looking at him like, well, what's this? And again, I think I'm almost on Candid Camera. And I said, what do I do with that? And the guy says, oh, you eat them. I said, I'm not eating them. You eat them. So sure enough, he ate them. And I was like, all right, if he's eating them, I'll eat them. So I ate them. And I tell you, they were pretty good. Like crickets were pretty good. So I get that part of it. And then I dove a little bit deeper into it, thinking about, of course, I had to now analyze this. How are these people eating crickets? And then I figured out how much protein they had and everything, and that there are actually protein bars made out of crickets out there. I think the idea of using what nature provides to feed part of the complex system is beautiful. For humans, probably not so much. And that consciousness of, I think what's going to happen is to scare us, either eat the crickets or eat this manufactured food. I think that's where we're going to get pushed. So the whole idea of all this good, healthy food, that, we hear everything about the cows burping or farting too much now, or whatever they're saying is, affecting, the global impact here. So I think they're getting distracted, and we're going to be presented with two options, and neither one of them are going to be better for the human being.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the what is it? Problem, reaction, solution. Then there's the solutions offered or nothing. They're taking you a step in the wrong direction. I too have had crickets. I had crickets when I was out in Thailand with my old man at a street market. I had a big plastic bag of them, and I was eating them with chopsticks. And my dad was fucking gagging as I was putting it down. They had cockroaches. They had all sorts. I was like, nah, I'll mess with the crickets. I'll try those. When in Rome, I'm not going to do the cockroaches. They're a little bit big, and they were great. They tasted like French fries. They were crunchy, salty, and oily, right? And it was probably fucking peanut oil or God knows what they were using, so not something high in omega-6. But it tasted fine. It tastes like no big deal. When you understand regenerative agriculture, though, you understand that producing insects in a lab in mass is not going to save the soil. It's not going to heal the earth. It's not going to counter all the monoculture that we've been doing. It's not going to counter all the shit we put in the ground. And the one way out of that is with ruminant animals, right? It's with grazing in a savory manner. It's and there's plenty of documentaries about that. I talk about all the time. But Biggest Little Farm, Kiss the Ground. They got the new one coming out. Ryland's been on the podcast. The guy who did that documentary, Common Ground, is coming out very soon. That'll be on Netflix. And there's plenty of places you can see this. The Soil Will Save Us, an excellent book that dives deep into this. Science and Agriculture by Dr. Arden B. Anderson. This is an excellent one. There's so much in here, and the data, we've known about this. It's not like this ain't new shit. Richard Perkins, I got this one right here. It's funny. It's almost like I had these stuff queued up for the video watchers. That regenerative agriculture book from Perkins is a fucking textbook, dude. It costs as much as a textbook too. But I mean, there's no doubt. Like, we can regenerate the land. We can heal our water. We can heal the animals that then heal us. That takes us stepping into harmony with nature. Not calling the shots on, hey, this is the reason we have climate change. It's like, what are you fucking talking about, man? We're burning fossil fuels that have been stored in the ground. It never would have come up before if that's the cause, right? And it's changed. It's not warming. Before warming, it was cooling. And then it's like, well, we don't know if it's going to warm or cool, but we know there's more natural disasters. And yeah, it's I agree with you though. There's a lot there where those, whatever happens, as a means of getting us to make hard decisions, something is going to happen. That's the thing to remind yourself of. A lot of people that see this thing as straight and no issues. You tell them about Event 201, that it was 3 months before the pandemic started. And they're like, well, yeah, people, in the fire department, we'd run hazmat things all the time, that kind of stuff. I'm like, the timing of it just seems a little strange, right? And the way that they talked through the media and all these things where they did the mock, like all of that actually played out the exact way it did on Event 201. So there's things like that raise an eyebrow. And then, of course, Gates did Event 202. Not many people are privy to this, but Event 202 was done this year, where he makes claim that the next pandemic will be in 2025 and that it's going to affect kids. Now, how he can claim that it's going to affect kids worse than the previous one is kind of a head scratcher, right? I mean, he's got some Nostradamus skills. But I tend to take him seriously when he says that, that shit's going to hit the fan in 2025. And I imagine with election cycles and things like that, we're going to have more shit hitting the fan in the very near future, but we get a year off where like 2023 is like, oh, everything feels normal, and a lot of people just go back to their daily grind. This is what's right in front of me. And they're it's akin to putting your head in, an ostrich sticking their head in the sand. You have to have the purview to see. And then also the wherewithal to not get scared out of your mind, but to hold the line and say, this is all right. This is what I can make an intelligent decision about. This is where I can bridge for the future.
I think you're spot on right there. To put our heads in the sand and act as if that stuff isn't a possibility. I think that's what happened in COVID. I think all the writing was on the wall. I think they were telling us out loud, this is coming. And we just weren't paying attention because you thought it was too outside of the possibility, out of the realm. And now I think enough people are paying attention. Now the question is, are we going to pay attention enough to actually take action? And I would say to everyone, at first glance, it can be a little bit scary. It's no different than anything else in life. It really isn't. There's challenges. There's ups and downs. When I have these conversations with my wife, which I always have to go easy as I'm, unloading copious amounts of ammo into my house or bags of food or whatever it may be. She's like, for real? You got more ammo? I'm like, yeah, got some more ammo. And then she'd come up with the why. And I'm like, why? I'm like, why not? And as you know, so the preparation to be prepared, and that is really the idea, is to be prepared to have your holes filled in case something goes wrong a little bit. And that's why I say it's really no different than any other part of life. If you're not prepared for a little bit downswing in economics, then financially you're going to get yourself in trouble. So prepare yourself. And most people, I think, try to move in that direction, try to prepare themselves financially. Physically, I've been in healthcare for 27 years, and I encourage people all the time, put on your priority list to prepare yourself to be sick one day. You're going to run into one of the 4 horsemen, which is 4 different types of disease. You're going to run into them, but who you are prior is going to decide how you handle them. And I think we're in the same situation right now with things that seem completely out of our own control. Food resources, energy resources, financial control, manipulation of politics, all of these things. And because money is the driver, that is the scary part. That makes me believe that something crazy will continue to take place. And I say that humbly because I ask myself all the time, do I have a sellout point? Do I have a number that I could change my position on? And I don't know, because no one's offered me $100 million to tell people to eat like crap and get vaccinated all day. But if someone offered me $100 million, I don't know the answer to that. I'd like to think what I would say to that, but I don't know because I haven't been there. So because money is behind so much of this, money and power, anticipate that there's a lot of funky things coming our way.
Yeah, it's the I think the following the money trail is the door that opens, and then power does become the kind of the next thing in line there. And it's not it's not to say that all these billionaires and people like that are somehow in cahoots together. I think there's rivalries and all the other things that you get with any team in sports, but at the same time there is a drive, and they're not beating around the bush, they're not hiding any of this. Like Klaus Schwab was talking about the fourth industrial revolution for decades before he wrote COVID-19 and the Great Reset, and just repackaged it, right? Like that and then this is the time, right? Now is the time, and we can build back better, and all the slogan lines of how to change the world and how to effectively change society. And at every point, as you read through that book, he states we have to do it through behavior change, through behavior modification, which means they're looking to control the masses. There's already, the governments do control in some way, shape, or form. But to the degree that he's talking about, that would require the release, not only our privacy, but all of our rights that we've worked so hard, that the founding forefathers worked so hard to gain here, at the expense of the genocide of the first peoples of this nation, at the expense of that. Like, you got to weigh all these things and still say, yeah, that's fucked up beyond belief. And at the same time, we can't allow that to be in vain. We can't allow that everything that it took to put us in the position that we're in to slip away from our hands because we're stuck on fucking Instagram and we're not paying attention,
There's a subtlety that I like to think, kind of a goodness that comes of all of this. I remember back when we had the towers crashed into, there was this almost nationwide pride that stood up, regardless of how it happened or all the politics go behind that. But there was this underground nationwide pride where I think for a moment we put everything aside, reds and blues and colors and races and everything, and we stood arm in arm. And it was because people were being had tragedy. And I think that if we continue to be pushed down this road, I think the powers to be will be surprised at how strong the American pride truly is and how much love usually can stand up and conquer almost all evils. And I think these are the conversations that right now thousands of others are having, and the consciousness is continuing to grow. And I think it's silent, but I think it's powerful. I feel like every day I run into people like you and I that are good men and women that are thinking and moving in the same conscious direction, where 4 or 5 years ago, not even thinking about it, not even moving themselves emotionally or spiritually in these directions. So the optimistic part of me continues to think that good will overcome evil, and that they're going to kind of poke the bear one too many times, and they're going to see how strong and how connected as humans we really are.
I love that, brother, and I'm going to hold on to that for sure.
Maybe I'm super optimistic, but I feel it. I do feel some of that authentically.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's it's funny. It's like in more of the woo woo shit and astrology and some of the things that have come out of the I Ching, like human design and gene keys. I had Richard Rudd on, who came from human design and gave birth to the gene keys. He has a prophecy of what's to come, through a 3-day altered experience. And it's really brilliant. It's really uplifting. And it's like, fuck yeah. And it's like, I'd rather hold on to that image, even if it doesn't come to fruition. Like, let that be my guiding light, than the panic of this is what the bad guys are up to. I want to be privy to that. I need to look through these things. That way I have, all the information in front of me, but at the same time, the power of love is undeniable, and people are generally good people. And I think most people that are deniers of any evil in the world understand people are good people. They're a good person. That's why they can't see the potential of that. But you watch Game of Thrones, you watch fucking read the Lord of the Rings, like all this shit, Harry Potter, like this balance of light and dark is an eternal dance, and I'm sure there's ebbs and flows that go with that. So it's not something to deny.
Yeah. And to that, I would also say is as light as that sounds, because that sounds very nice, that love's going to prevail, but love is harsh. To, think about what we do for the love of your children, right? we've seen in history what people would do for their communities and for their clans and for their families. So I'm not saying it'll be easy and it's just going to be, let's just all love each other and it's going to work out. No, I think there's going to be some manning up here and there that's going to take place. And there's going to be some times that are going to be challenging, and yet what will prevail will be a foundation that's strong. And I don't believe that evil is ever founded on anything that's strong. I think it's a very weak foundation. Almost always, it's very personal. It's very egotistical. So for those reasons, I think that the love will prevail, but not because it's going to be easy. I think that we're going to have to find the better versions of ourselves, and that's where I also think everything we do matters. I think that how we are, how we're taking care of ourselves. We have this unit, this vessel that we were given from our Creator. There's a time when we have to start thinking, is my vessel at its best? Could it handle some prolonged, tough periods of time, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially? Could I handle tough times? And not everyone can. I think there's a lot of softness taking place, unfortunately. I think that. Yeah, just that. I think there's a lot of softness taking place, and I think we're going to have to find that strength and reserve. And I think it's there. I believe humans are badasses in general, and I'm hoping that people recognize that within themselves, because the journey will prevail, in my humble opinion, as a result of profound love and the depth of it, but not without wounds. No doubt about that.
No doubt, brother. Well, it's been excellent having you, Dr. Bart. We'll do it again for sure. Tell us about your podcast and where people can find you.
Beautiful. So thanks for having me, brother. Healthmadesimpleshow.com. That's my podcast, Health Made Simple Show. You can find me pretty much everywhere, like Spotify and Apple, all those good ones. Even if you didn't do the whole show, Health Made Simple, you could just find it under Dr. Bart Precourt. You'll find me there. Same thing, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on all those spots. Try to put as much,
cool, brother.
Yeah, much we can out there.
We'll link to all that in the show notes for you.
Kyle, I appreciate you having me here today. Great conversation as usual. Hopefully we're going to rub elbows in person one day soon.
Absolutely, brother. I look forward to it.